Will there be another world war in the next decade? And if so, where will it start? Interesting, big, unbounded question for ChatGPT. I'm kind of curious what we get. So we have something interesting in this question because there's a ton of assumptions that we're asking the model to make, like what actually constitutes a world war? What are we trying to understand? Is it for us trade war, an actual war? So let's look at its answer. Will there be another world war in the next decade? Short answer, major world war in the next 10 years is unlikely but not impossible. Reasonable probability range is 10 to 20%. And it tries to define what a world war is, factors reducing the likelihood, high awareness of escalation risk, and a few other factors. And then it gets into some very short answers on potential places this would start. So we did what I think a lot of people do, in that we went to a product and we asked it our human question. But the challenge is we didn't do two things, really even three things. So we didn't really specify our assumptions. We didn't pick a model. And importantly, we didn't engineer the prompt at all. We just asked it a simple human question. So let's see if we can't break down quickly, trying a variation on this approach. In the second example, we've gone and said, I want you to tell me a prompt that I can ask you to give me a better answer to this question. So it does a couple of useful things for us here, right? It spits back the answer. It tells the agent what its role is, right? You're a seasoned geopolitical analyst with deep expertise in a conflict and forecasting. It gives it a more specific version of the problem, assess the likelihood of a major world war, which it defines as a multi-region, multi-great power conflict, comparable in scale and impact to World War I or II, which I think is probably an assumption a lot of us would share, occurring within the next 10 years. And then, really usefully, it breaks the task down into its component parts, define the terms and scope, estimate the overall likelihood, identify potential flashpoints in regions, give us a number of scenarios and escalation pathways, and it lists through all of these specific things that on their own are not necessarily an answer to the question of will there be another world war in the next 10 years, but aggregate up for a human or for another reasoning capability to give us a really solid answer to that question. So we run that prompt, model spits back an answer. Already we see some better stuff. It gives us a specific ballpark estimate range, 5 to 15%. It talks about specific triggers, locations, the Taiwan Strait, Eastern Europe, Korean Peninsula. It gives us an executive summary and then dives into these specific components. It gives us a bottom line up front. It's not likely, but the pathways are real enough that serious risk reduction and crisis management efforts are urgent, which again sounds a little bit different from 10 to 20%. Don't worry about it. And then it also gets us into a couple of different models to think about what war is. Is it multi-party conflict? Is it multi-region conflict? So this is already a qualitatively better answer, or a more complete answer to the question. There are different models that you can ask these questions to. And as I said, they're built of different sort of sizes and different levels of complexity. But roughly think of these as the amount of reasoning effort that will go into trying to predict these next words for you. The size and the amount of computing time that model will run for are the main variables that you're trying to account for in picking a specific model for your question. If you have a simple factual question, you don't need a highly complex model. You don't need a lot of compute time. But this is a big complex forecasting question. And with our engineered prompt, we're actually asking the agent to answer 10 different baskets of small specific problems like terms and scope and potential scenarios. So a more powerful model is a good thing, and asking for more computing time is better. So in our first engineered prompt, we went to GPT 5.1 thinking and we said, okay, just give me an answer. In our second, we actually went down to the bottom in the search bar and we set the amount of thinking time to extend it. For users on other licenses, you can actually increase further that amount of thinking time that you're asking for. And it's really important to recognize there is no consumer protection here. So if somebody advertises something as standard thinking versus extended thinking, they're making no commitments to you as the user about what that actually means in terms of a quantifiable answer of 2 processors instead of 4, or 3 processors instead of 6, 10 minutes instead of 2 minutes. All of these companies are trying to manage the fact that they don't have anywhere near enough computers to run these models for most people most of the time. And so these are useful ways to direct or try to influence a little bit what kind of computing resources and what kind of model you use, but ultimately it's up to those companies. And when they need to turn the speed down and turn the intensity down because so many people are online, they're gonna do it. because what they don't want is an outage, and they don't want people to drop off their platform for good. Now let's look and see if we ask if there's going to be a world war in the next decade. If so, to just a regular thinking model without that prompt engineering. We don't have the executive summary. We get percentage values, but now they're not specific to a scenario. There's no citations. This is a much shorter, kind of less complete. It's also very narrative heavy. It's immediately trying to drop into when the war starts, how did it happen in Taiwan? How did it happen in Europe? So it's hard to generalize across these answers. Let's ask that same thing to GPT 5.1 instant. True world war in the next 10 years is possible, but unlikely. Back to that 10 to 20% number. Economic interdependence and high political costs work against it. It's actively trying to ask, what is a world war? It's coming back and it's really telling us why it thinks 10 to 20% is the range without explaining what those percentages are supposed to tell us. And then it gives us a couple of bullet points each, but none of that prose about specific scenarios like Taiwan or Eastern Europe. It's kind of short and snappy. It almost looks like a series of tweets strung together. It's not necessarily what we'd be able to make really good use out of as we're thinking about whether or not there's going to be a world war happening in the next 10 years. So, all right, so we have our most intense possible thinking model, ChatGPT 5.1 thinking. We've given it this extended thinking, given it this engineered prompt, and we get a better answer back here. We have an executive summary. Again, I put the probability of a truly global World War I, World War II scale war in the next 10 years as low, but not negligible. So we have our first kind of noted warning in these sequences. The probability of at least one, there could be multiple, high-intensity regional war involving a major power is substantially higher, on the order of 40 to 60%. All right, sports fans, we are in a game here. That is a really interesting answer, because now suddenly I'm going home and buying canned goods. The most plausible triggers here are a US-China conflict over Taiwan, a NATO-Russia clash, or a Mideast war centered on Israel and Iran. All of these in the next 10 years. That's interesting. It probably tracks with existing research. It also ties in pretty firmly, though, to what we see in the broader news and reporting space about likely wars in the next 10 years. And it answers the rest of our questions for us. It defines what a world war is, gives us time horizons, talks through its different confidence levels for different kinds of conflict. So I'd say this is a pretty useful answer. This is also coming for the first time that we've seen with citations. So we actually have the model, because it's been given this extended thinking requirement, and we didn't ask that in the prompt, but we could. It's actually trying to assert outside sources for a number of the claims that it's making. Control over energy flows and choke points is a core issue for some of these stakeholders. There's a House of Commons report here mentioned in a couple of places. So some of this may be hallucinated, some of it might not be true. And it's useful when we can get the model and prompt the model to be very specific about citing its claims. Again, with prompt engineering, you're only going to get so far, because you cannot dictate how the model operates or for how long it runs. But it's a way of increasing your likelihood, just like a good query in Google or searching through Wikipedia intelligently. It's a good way to improve the quality of your answer. As we're thinking about this stuff, picking models, engineering prompts, trying to be specific with your scope and your assumptions, all these things can make these more useful tools for you. But I think probably the most important lesson from this and any of the interactions we're having is use this stuff, right? Like, we understand what a hammer can do. We understand what a screwdriver is intended to do, but those tools have been fixed. They've been static in how they're built and designed and used for a very long time. These tools are constantly changing underneath our hands. So the best thing you can do is get out there and use them a lot. Just start to feel the edges of what's changing faster than not, and maybe what's more useful to you than not.